Colonel Darling, about a couple of years ago, you had a purge of the regiment and got rid of your black power people. Have you had any more black power trouble since then?
Well, to revert to the purge, as you call it, 2 years ago, I wouldn't say that we got rid of our black power people when we got rid of a number of people in the regiment then, as I told you at that time, people who were of no use to the regiment for a great many reasons, and I would think black power was an extremely minor one of those.
Was the reason for it, in fact, the reason for the action, but you didn't only get rid of those?
The black power movement as such was an island problem, but it was not a problem of the Bermuda Regiment. The Bermuda Regiment was, at that time, taking into its strength people who didn't want to be there. They were conscripted in, and many of them were not enthusiastic because of the black power influences, but they were not members of the black power group.
Is there any black power movement here now, do you think?
If there is, it is very, very minor. That, to my knowledge, there certainly, I would say, has been a decline in that sort of movement and influence, a steady and definite decline over the past 2 or 3 years.
Do you think you have a security problem in the island at all? You have had one, a minor one, in the last, over the past 5 or 6 years.
I would say that there's always a security problem in any place. And as such, it's something that we should always be ready for. And in fact, we do train in this role because of the influences that do exist in other places, and we know they rub off here.
Do you think that the conditions on the island now are such that there is nothing much for an extremist group to feed on?
I do. I think that conditions in this island are probably as good as anywhere in the world. The opportunities for young people are innumerable. The standard of living is extremely good. The only possible condition here that might be said to be a disadvantage to a young man is the fact that it's so restricted in size. There's a feeling of being confined and nowhere to go. The place is rather overcrowded, and they do tend to feel a little frustrated.
I'm hearing that the man in the street is saying that this crime was probably committed by outsiders because no Bermudian was capable of this. Now, as a Bermudian yourself, do you think that's likely?
It's certainly been said many times that that an outsider, hired gunman or someone must have done this because it's such a fantastic thing to do. I wouldn't like to say whether it was or not. I hope it was an outsider, but I wouldn't.
Would you say there are people on the island capable of doing a thing like this?
I would like to think that there wasn't anybody capable of doing a thing like this on the island, but I wouldn't categorically say there wasn't anybody because it was done. And there is no evidence to say whether it was an outsider or a Bermudian at this point.
Thank you very much. I'd like to put... Colonel Darling, I've heard it said by Bermudians that this crime must have been committed by an outsider. Is this a bit of a cop-out? Is this people saying it couldn't happen here because this is a paradise in which we just don't breed people who commit crimes like this?
I think that you may well be right that it is a bit of a cop-out in a case like this where the crime is so unbelievable and so entirely unnecessary. It's hard to say whether it could have been done by a Bermuda or an outsider, or whether this is even a relevant point, because it's undoubtedly something that bears no relation to the average Bermudian's thinking politically or in any way. There is no advantage to anybody in such a murder. It doesn't prove anything, and there has been no expression of what it might prove by any group or organization who may be feeling in any way subversive to the present state of affairs here.
So you're saying this must have been the work of an individual and not of a group?
I would say that if it's not the work of an individual, then it's the work of a very, very small group. because it's a tiny place, and everything that happens, if you sneeze, you're told about it the next day by everybody you pass in the street.
Thank you very much. Colonel Darling, a lot of local people are saying that this crime could not have been committed by a Bermudian, because this is just not the sort of place where a crime like that could happen. Do it again. Colonel Darling, I've heard local people say that this crime must have been committed by an outsider, that it just isn't the kind of thing Bermudians would have done. Isn't that a cop-out, like saying that all riots here have to be the work of outsiders, outside agitators? Try it once more. Colonel Darling, I've heard local people say that this crime must have been committed by an outsider, but isn't this a bit of a cop-out, like saying that riots are always caused by outside agitators?